Thank you, Chair. Minister, I might take you now to Budget Paper 4, Volume 1 and page 202, and specifically the issue of kids with disability in the public school system. My first question is, I see from these papers that we have seen a big increase of students with disability. I think it's from 16,534 in 2018 to 19,111 in 2019. Do you think we have enough disability-specific places in the system to cope with this increase?
There's a bit to this, so I'll provide some high-level information, and as we go into it, there may be occasions where I might need some further advice from departmental officers. So perhaps is it useful to the member if I potentially provide some information that may be broader than the narrowness of the question, and then we can come back to the detail further if you'd like. Is that okay? So preschools and school children and students in government schools and preschools can access teaching and learning support via the department's Inclusive Education Support Program, IESP. The IESP was introduced at the beginning of the 2019 preschool and school year and replaced the former preschool support and disability support programs. Students, according to this model, are now funded according to their functional need rather than their disability diagnosis or label. This is an important development because diagnosis is not the only determinant of funding. Rather, the functional need of a child, the adjustments the teacher needs to make to support that child's learning, are now the driver of teaching and learning support. The new funding model has seen greater investment in supporting students with a disability than ever before. So in 2019, preschool children with disability were allocated a total of $11.38 million compared to $7.22 million in 2018. In 2019, school students with a disability, including those in specialist education options, were allocated $255 million compared to $255.2 million compared to $230.6 million. That was a 10.66% increase in 12 months. At the Term 3 Census 2020, 21,115.7 FTE students were being supported under the IESP. This includes students in receiving targeted categories of funding allocations and support via the IESP grant. This is a 10.5% increase in FTE from the previous year, where it was 19,111.2 FTE. The largest increases have occurred in the areas of autism and complex social and emotional behaviour. In preschools, as at Term 3 2020, 230 FTE have been funded at the extensive level. There were 404 FTE in 2019 and 66 FTE in 2018. Now, perhaps in relation to special options, which I think is probably directly in the wheelhouse of where the member's question was, 84.3% of students with disability attend mainstream schools, 15.7% attend a specialised educational option, 6.7% are in a special class, 4.3% are in a disability unit, 4.7% are in a special school. In 2020, student enrolments in specialised education options were 984 in special schools, 906 in disability units, 1,425 in special classes. The department has a number of specialised education options geographically placed across South Australia to meet local demand. That's 151 special classes, 39 disability units, 15 special schools, 1 school for vision impairment, 4 centres of deaf education. These used to be called Centres for Hearing Impaired. The CHI schools, as the member might recall, we call those Centres of Deaf Education now, which I think has been a change that has been welcomed by advocates that I've spoken to. 6 speech and language classes, 16 inclusive preschool programs, and 1 dedicated preschool at the Briars. The number of specialised education options has been expanding. So using projection data, the department anticipates further expected need, though it's complex because parent choice, family movements and student needs fluctuate. This year we have made a number of recent announcements of increased specialised educational options. We've got special classes at Salisbury East High School and Mount Gambier High School, providing an additional 24 places from the beginning of this year. Nooryup High and Springbank College have each converted one of their disability unit classes of 8 to a special class of 12 students due to a changing mix of student need away from the more intensive disability unit towards the less intensive special class. The conversions provided an additional 24 special class places from the beginning of this year. A 2-class disability unit at Modbury Special School now provides an additional 16 places, and that has been in place since the beginning of Term 3. A further 3 secondary schools at Golden Grove, Salisbury and Para Hills will each convert one of their disability unit classes of 8 to a special class of 12 places, again due to a changing mix of student need away from the more intensive disability unit towards the less intensive special class. These conversions will provide an additional 36 special class places from Term 1 next year. There are 180 extra places at 11 secondary schools, as part of the Year 7 to High School project that commenced in 2022, and I think although 11 of those have been announced publicly. There are an additional 104 special options placements at each of the 2 new schools in Angle Vale and Aldinga, which are opening progressively in 2022. There is an additional special class included in the design of the new Whyalla Secondary School, bringing the total to 48 special class places there. We've got a feasibility study examining the future need for Ceduna Area School. We've got the process, and this is really important because I think this gets to the nub of where there's some anxiety in the community about whether or not a parent's child is going to be able to access a place. So the process of placing students in specialised educational options is based on need. There are 3 stages. In Term 2, they're looking at the secondary, and early Term 3, primary, and late Term 3, preschool and junior primary. In response to the number of children who were not able to be offered a place through that process, the department this year has established additional classes, an Ingle Farm East Primary School, which will offer an additional disability unit class and a primary special class. The South Downs Primary School will offer 2 additional disability unit classes, and Balaclava Primary School will offer a new disability unit class. The classes provide an additional 32 disability unit places and 12 special class places, and a further 6 schools are still under investigation, where we're looking for possible further expansions for next year. The department is also investigating opportunities to place more children who were not able to be offered a special option place in those first rounds. Because children are continuing to be placed, more settled placement data will be available in the next 2 weeks. We are wanting to make sure that every child in our system is given the support that they need. There's no cost saving to the department if the child is identified as being in a mainstream class with additional support. The important thing is that the placement in a class, that class should be relevant to the needs of that child. Not just their well-being needs and their developmental needs, but their educational needs as well. We don't want a situation where a child with extra support is being put in a place that will give them no educational benefit whatsoever. We would rather provide extra support to them in a mainstream class. But that said, we are working extremely hard overtime to enhance the offerings and ensure that they can have educational growth in a setting that's appropriate. That's why all of these additional special classes, disability units that I've just gone through have been added to the system over and above what was there last year to meet some of that gap in where the provision was. And as I say, there are 6 further schools where extra provision is currently under investigation, and I believe in the next 2 weeks. In the next 2 weeks, those final decisions will be further made. Any mainstream student, if there are any mainstream students next year with a student who meets that need that is unplaced, they will receive IESP resourcing to ensure that student's learning success. This is not a cost saving for the department, but I am pleased that even though the growth in demand, the growth in the need for the number of places has been significant year on year, the gap between the number of students who need that extra support and the number of students receiving an appropriate placement has diminished dramatically this year. We will want it to continue diminishing, but I'm sure that when the former minister, the member for Port Adelaide, first, I think in 2016, sought the central collection of this data, she would recall the challenge that was to the system then, with well over 100 students at that stage who were unable to be found an appropriate placement and were given support in the mainstream setting instead. We have got that number well down. We're still looking to support all of those children who are left. Prior to 2016, we don't have data on this because it just wasn't collected centrally.
Member Farrar. Thank you, Minister, for that answer. How long is the wait list for a special options placement, whether it be a special class, a disability unit or a special school in the southern and northern suburbs, if you have that data?
I'll see what I've got at hand.
Thank you.
So to be clear, there's no wait list as such in terms of if a child's been identified, then they'll get support. The question is, and I think this is what the member's getting at, I'm not meaning to be difficult in any way. I'm sure that the member would agree with this characterisation that a child's identified as needing the support, they're going to get the support. Now, ideally, the support's going to be in the class or unit or setting that has been identified as most appropriate. And if their places have not been identified that enable them to fit that, they will get a body of support through the ISP funding model to enable them to have that wraparound support in a mainstream setting. Now, I don't have disaggregated data by region. As I say, this is changing every day as more placements are being found and those classes are coming online. I would anticipate that by that well before the estimates responses are due according to the usual process, we'll have some pretty clear data. So I'm going to take the question on notice on the basis that the information is changing every week. And I'll endeavour to not just wait until estimates responses are due, but to get back directly to the member for right and to those parents of families who have sought specific information in relation to their children as soon as possible. Each one of their cases is very important, and they're going to want to know by the end of the year if a placement in a unit or a class, whichever is relevant, is able to be done by the beginning of next year, or if there's going to have to be some extra level of support to support them in a mainstream setting. And we will be, we take these responsibilities very, very seriously, and I have great confidence in the department because I've seen the numbers coming down compared to previous years quite dramatically, that we're very much on track to have more children than ever before placed in a setting that is appropriate to their education and wellbeing needs.